The content shared on the Brain Scrub podcast is for entertainment, personal reflection, and general information only. The views expressed by the host and guest are based on personal experiences and opinions and may not reflect scientific research or professional advice. This podcast is not a substitute for medical, psychological, or therapeutic guidance. If you are seeking support for your mental health or well-being, please consult a qualified professional. By listening, you acknowledge that any actions you take based on the ideas discussed are your own responsibility. Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub. I'm your host, Glenn Sollers, and of course, my co-host is in the house, Jeff.
Me.
Yo, Jeff. I have to first of all say that my wife and I decided to make our first Vietnamese coffee this morning, which was an egg coffee, and we brought this coffee called Robusta coffee from Vietnam, which is stronger in caffeine content than our standard North American coffee. So if I'm a bit of a high horse today, it's because we're on this extra caffeine. We had a nice egg coffee, which we've never made before on our own. And yeah, just had to throw that out there. Which
I'm on my decaf coffee chill vibe. So I'll balance you out.
Do you have caffeine in your coffee as well, or do you just drink decaf?
No.
You just do
Just
decaf?
decaf. Yeah.
Then why even have coffee? It's disgusting.
I like the taste of it.
You do? Well, I guess it's kind of like
Yeah.
beer. Beer's kind of disgusting. And I'm now switching more over to de-alcoholized beer.
Yeah, I drink de-alkalized beer.
What is it about the taste of beer? Like, why
I
is
don't
it
know.
that? Because it is kind of, when you think about it, it's a bit revolting.
Yeah, it doesn't taste that great. I mean, no, I don't know. I mean, I think some of the mass-produced beers don't taste that great, but the craft beers, you have some really good flavors there.
But
But
you're still off alcohol, right?
yeah, I don't drink. Yeah.
Wow.
But there's a lot of great non-alcoholic beers and beverages coming out these days that you know don't have all the buzz but all the
Yeah.
flavor. So like I
So,
got this one down the road, peaches and cream, and it's made in Penticton, and I love it. It's great. It tastes like regular beer, to be honest, and you wouldn't even know it didn't have alcohol in it. So
yeah, but peaches and cream is a corn type too. Does it taste
I
like
guess
corn at all?
no, it just tastes like peaches
Peaches
and
and
it's kind
cream.
of creamy.
Wow, you're no ordinary dude.
No,
Which
I'm
which
not.
which leads us to today's topic. Jeff, introduce it.
Yeah, so we talked about this earlier, and one thing I've noticed in our culture, especially, is that we have this unending, I don't know what it is, need or reaction to being better all the time. Um, that somehow we should be living these extraordinary lives. We should have all the money in the world and the healthiest we can be, and have all these amazing jobs that we're inspired by, and all of these things, right? And
Mm,
and the truth of the matter is, we don't have that. That's an illusion. We're all just ordinary people, and there's nothing wrong. What's wrong with being ordinary, right? We don't and I'm not saying don't strive to be better. Don't strive to, try to increase your income, or, stay healthy or anything like that. But what's it like just to be okay with where we're at? Why can't it be okay just to be ordinary? Just to be that guy who gets up in the morning, goes, has his morning pee, goes downstairs, drinks his coffee, and then have life to deal with. And that's okay. You know,
yeah, but
none,
what?
our kids aren't our kids. They're not all perfect either. They're not all grade A scholars who are, super athletes that go to all these, ultra elite camps and all of this stuff. No, they're just ordinary kids,
Yeah,
you
but
know.
what's ordinary to you? Because you were talking earlier about this need to strive for more money and more material things and this and that and have goals and try to achieve those goals. So I'm lacking.
What I mean by ordinary is that we all have problems and issues.
Yeah.
we're not always going to be able to work them out. They just are what they are
Mm-hmm.
because we are who we are. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to have problems. It's okay to be average. It's okay to not be a millionaire. It's okay to not have the best job. It's okay to not have kids who get straight A's in school or are, ultra athletes or something like that. It's okay just to be ordinary. Most of us are. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on people to be, our culture does, to be more than we actually are. It's like there's this never ending pursuit of this ideology that doesn't exist, that's not real, because at the end of the day, we're all in some ways broken. I'm not saying we're completely broken. I'm saying humans are imperfect. And pursuing this idea of perfectionism is an illusion. Having all this money or whatever it might be, that's just one example. It actually creates, I think, more misery and suffering for us, because if we're always trying to strive for it, we never have it. So how can we ever be happy, right? We can never be happy with just what we have. Just enjoy and be grateful for what we have and who we are as individuals, as opposed to trying to be something we're not.
Okay. And I agree with you in part. Like I think about people who do the same job their entire life, and they may
And
not.
that's okay.
That's okay, yeah. And I want to challenge you on this: is what is the challenge in just being ordinary? Like, let's say every single day you got up, you did what you had to do, you went to your job, you got home, and you went to bed, and you just had like a routine, ordinary life.
Yep.
Would that make you happy?
It can make some people happy.
Okay.
So so I think what's happened is, in some ways, over the last few decades, I think it started honestly a lot too with our generation, Gen X, because we were told to go to school, go to school, get an education, go to university, get an education. Everybody was so pushed into going to university in our generation.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everybody's going, man, was that ever useless? So many people are overeducated, and we actually need people who can do more skill-based jobs, like in the trades, right?
Yeah.
We're, in this country especially, we're lacking people for the trades industry. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think it started with our generation, especially, where this need to continually do work on ourselves or have some means of self-improvement, and whether it's, getting more educated or having higher incomes or having those, that six pack ab look or whatever it might be, right? It's all of these realistic expectations that never get met, because even if you have all that, are you ever happy? Does it ever end? Does it ever stop?
Well,
It never stops.
yeah, but what is happiness to you?
I think happiness
How
to
do you
me is
define
just,
it?
I think to me, happiness is being thankful in the moment for what you do have and who and the people in your life. It's not about what you don't have. It's about appreciating what you do have. And so I think for me is appreciate the ordinary. And I think our culture has stopped appreciating the ordinary, because I think for the last several decades, like I said, I think it started in our generation, the conditioning has been strive to do better, strive to do better. And we started off, and that was a big push for all of us to go out and get university educations. And then it turned into other things in our life, right? And so we push it on to our children. Look at all the, like I said, look at all the parents out there now pushing their kids to get into these, to become the ultimate soccer player or the ultimate hockey player, and they push them, and then the kids end up hating the sports because there's so much pressure on them to excel and perform. And so, all of this conditioning that we've been brought up with, we're pushing onto our children now. And I can only imagine what our children are going to be like in 20, 30 years. No wonder we have so much anxiety in our younger generations. It's like we just don't even allow our children to just be themselves and to be ordinary and to be okay with that and to love them for who they are and not for what we want them to be, or who we think they should be, or because we're conditioned to believe that, well, I want them to have a better life. What, what would, why is it not okay just for our children to grow up and have ordinary lives? There's nothing wrong with that, because as long as they can appreciate and enjoy what they have, then they don't need anything more. And I think we need to get back to that, because I think we're missing that in our culture nowadays. We're missing just being able to enjoy the ordinary.
I agree. Again, like I mentioned earlier, in part with you on this. There is, because I have countless examples of situations where kids are pushed to their limits and now they have anxiety issues because they are used to being top in their class or top on sports teams, and then they push themselves a bit too hard. And there's one clear example that I have where this younger lady, she was probably 14, and she was offered to go to the UK and join a soccer program there. And I guess she might have just pushed herself too hard. She had an injury and now she's out of soccer. And that's at a young age. But what it has done for her is, I guess, this motivation and drive to be good at something. She now has graduated high school at the age of 16, and she's going to university at the age of 17. So and that's just one example. And there's other examples where, like in her case, it's probably not anxiety, but there's other cases where for sure parents push their kids and then they get anxiety because they're used to being at the top, and then they're not at the top anymore. But I think there's parts of this, Jeff, like for example, you mentioned always wanting to grow and develop. You and I went through the Mankind Project years ago. What would be different about you now, or what changed for you in that moment when you started doing that work on yourself? Because that was really getting out of your ordinary life. And
Well, it is and it isn't. I don't say that there's no place for self improvement and working on our own self awareness, right?
mm-hmm.
That's okay, right? But it's also okay if we don't, right? We don't need these things to be okay with who we are, right? And I think we've gotten so focused on all of these ideologies around self-improvement and having a better life. And look at our culture. We do live in a very relative to most of the rest of the world, we live in a culture of, well, I hate to say it, but entitlement in some ways. Modern day conveniences, we can have things arrive at our door with the click of a button. All of these things that supposedly have improved our lives, and yet the rates of mental distress and like anxiety and depression, mental illness, all those things have gone up continually over the last several decades. Why is that? With all of these things that we've created in our society that's supposed to improve our lives, why is it that we have all of these increasing rates of depression and anxiety and mental illness and all those things? It's because we've been conditioned to just not be okay with where we're at. So we're never happy, because how can we be? Because we've always been taught that there's a better life out there for you. You just have to keep working on yourself to achieve it. So we're never enough for it.
Yeah, and that starts at a young age as well. There's and I don't know how this fits into it, but I think it fits into it a bit, is I was talking to a gentleman who he was the Uber driver, and he was from India, and we were just talking about a trip that my wife and I did to Mexico, and different mentalities in different countries, and that in India there's a strong family unit where,
Yeah.
but it's not just your family. He mentioned where he was from in India, the whole village looks after you when you're a kid. So the parents might have to go out and do something, but you're always welcome to go to everybody's house. So everybody becomes your mother and father in the community, because everybody will let you in. Where here we live behind our gated communities, we have our lawns, and we don't really interact. And the people that are our caregivers are either the school system, maybe our neighbors, but we become dependent on two individuals, our mother or father, and if they're together.
Yeah.
And they might be working. So I think in large part, I've learned to become very independent. For me, as an example, I didn't have my dad around that often. My mom was busy working on the farm. I was very lonely all by myself at times, and I had to figure things out myself. And so at the young age, I had to start taking control and start managing myself and figuring out how do I survive in this world, because I felt very alone. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of kids feel that way, and then they rely on their computers or their iPhones or their iPads or whatever it might be as their guiding light, if you will, or as their buddy, so to speak, versus being in a village where everybody cares about you, and everybody, and you feel the sense of belonging, you feel the sense of acceptance, you feel the sense of love and community, and people really want the best for me. Where
Yeah.
we're kind of thrown into the
Individualistic
into
world.
life and saying you figure it out on your own. But how do you
Yeah.
change that in this culture that we live in? Like, how do you create that?
Well, it starts with yourself, right? It starts
Yeah.
with creating your own community and support systems. I think that's obviously one of the biggest things that's lacking nowadays is I think children, especially nowadays, and adults for that matter. I mean, I know I feel it to some degree. Is I don't feel that sense of belonging I used to. When I was a kid and into my teenage years, and even in my 20s, I wasn't working. I wasn't quote unquote working on myself. Why? Because I was happy. When you're happy, you don't have that drive to work on yourself, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you accept yourself who you are because you're getting the reflections from people around you that they love you no matter what, anyways, and they just want to, you know I I had the most ordinary childhood, but in a way, it was so special. I grew up running around with my group of friends, playing in the forest and playing soccer, and capture the flag and all these things that were very ordinary. It's so I think when you grow up with that, you realize how special that is. And but something happened in our generation where all of a sudden we started becoming this individualistic society, like you said. And at the end of the day, if people felt that social connection, we're social beings. If we felt that support and that love for and acceptance for who we are as individuals, why would you need to go out and pay $1,000 for a self improvement course? Why would you need to strive so hard, right? Because people have your back. You feel that connection, and you feel that love and that self confidence without all these external things, right? So you could grow up with all of this community and support, and it's okay to work in the grocery store, and it's okay not to make $1 million a year, and it's okay to not be in the best shape of your life, or being all, whatever it might be. It's okay because you're just happy with who you are, because you're surrounded by people who reflect that, because they love who you are too. So I think that's definitely a part of it, right? Because we've become so individualistic. So we've taken it all on ourselves that we have to strive and improve because there's no one out there who's got our back,
And,
right?
and
And
maybe
so
that, yeah.
it's part of that capitalist society too. It's part of that. Well, if I don't improve myself, someone else might, and then therefore I'm lower down on the totem pole, so to speak, right? The corporate ladder or wherever it might be. So it's like we always have to work on ourselves and improve ourselves and get more education and all this stuff to be happier, and also to just to survive and compete, right? And I think it comes down to that lack of social support.
I don't know if you've ever seen the Anthony Robbins movie. It's quite profound, and it has a lot of parallels to what we went through in the Mankind Project, and also when I went through Landmark. And one question he asked the audience is, he said, how did you have to be in order to get love from an important person in your life? Which is a big thing, because so we then had to tailor who we are and fit into this. I better do this in order for them to love me. And I could go on and on about the things that I had to be in order to do that. So at a young age versus being in a part of a community where everybody loves you for who you are, all of a sudden I have to be something in order to get this, which creates that need to fit in, or it shifts our behaviors to get love. And I guess throughout our career, what you're saying is, yeah, we have this messaging, make a lot of money, have a great job. But I'm telling you from my own experience, I could have been in an ordinary job, Jeff, working at Bell and Billy Cellular when I graduated from university, answering phone
Yep.
calls and saying, "Hello, welcome to Bell and Billy. How can I help you today?" I could have done that for my entire life. And probably at the end, I'd probably be checking off my days till death because it wasn't a fulfilling job. It didn't make me happy. Right.
Right.
But now what I do, the work I do makes me happy. It's a fulfilling job. And at the end of the day, I don't regret work. I actually enjoy it. There's times where it's stressful. But if I didn't have that need to grow out of being just an ordinary worker, I would have impacted my level of happiness. Not from my own
Perhaps.
internal state, but just from my own, I'm doing the repetitive work. I'm doing this. I'm answering the phone. I'm trying to resolve customer service issues. I guess one could find happiness in that.
Yeah, totally. One can find happiness in anything we do, right? It's all about being in the moment, being present with it, and just accepting it. But again, I think we still project this onto, a lot, people in our culture in general. And eh, do we need to do all that? Do all of us need to do all that? I don't think so. We do need people who are okay with working a regular quote unquote job, right? That we can show up and get our coffee from when we go to the coffee shop or whatever it might be, right? And who knows, maybe to that person, that job is the best thing in life for them.
Mm-hmm.
That they might really love it. So again, I know for me, I have to watch my own projections because I could say, yeah, I might not be happy in that job, but that person could really love this job. And that might be their potential. That might be where they're meant to be. We're not all meant to be special, so to speak, because none of us are, and yet all of us are, right? That's the paradox. So it's like there's sociological theories on this too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like society it's organic. It's an organism. We all have a role to play. We can't all be the high paid lawyer or doctor or whatever it might be, because if everyone was that, then who would pick up our garbage? Who would clean our houses? Who would, all these things that are quote unquote ordinary are just as important.
Yeah, but those kind of jobs are also sadly viewed as lower class jobs, right?
Absolutely.
Like, remember when we were kids, our parents probably said, if you don't work hard, you're going to be a garbage man, right? And it was, it's like,
yeah,
so it's
sure.
about,
But
I think it ties into shame though, as well.
It does tie into shame. This is what I'm saying, the conditioning, right, of being better. But that's what I said earlier, right? Look where our country is now. Look at the lack of tradespeople we have now. Why? Because all our generation was pushed to go to university. You didn't learn how to throw a hammer in university. We got filled with a bunch of, I won't say useless knowledge, but to some degree, useless knowledge.
Dude, first of all, you throw hammers?
It's a metaphor. Dude.
Okay, it's okay.
But that's my point, right? This is what this conditioning has led to in our country. It's very real. We have a shortage of workers in the trade industry because of this conditioning and this mentality that we've taught our children that it's not okay to settle. And why is it settling in the first place? Why is it not okay to be a plumber? Plumbers make great money. And
they do, yeah.
I know, but because it's viewed as that ordinary job, right? So it's that conditioning again, right? You don't go to university to be a plumber. You go learn to be a plumber from another plumber, or you go to trade school. That's how you learn, right? But we were taught to go out and get this education. And for what? Do you use it? I have a sociology degree. What can I do with it? Absolutely nothing.
Well, yeah. And if you think about AI and stuff like that, a lot of the knowledge workers out there, they'll probably be eventually replaced.
Well, exactly. Because
right?
Now, exactly. So if anything, I would say people who go out into the trades will be much better off because it's a skill. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And until they invent, super amazing robots that can do what they do, and maybe that's further down the road, they can't be replaced.
Yeah. And if I think about the root cause, I think you're hitting a lot of key points here. And I think a lot of it has to do with self-love. In societies where you've grown up in a place where you are considered love as you are, I'll never forget this one time I went to one organization and went through the front desk, and the security guard was there. Happiest person in the world. And he was not originally from Canada. Happiest person
Right.
in the world. He was so joyful. He was so happy to see me.
Yeah.
And I was taken aback because I'm not used to security guards behaving this way. I'm more like they're gruff and okay, welcome. And yeah, who are you here to see? And this guy was completely different. Afterwards, after I had my meeting, I went up to him and I said, I have to say, the experience that you provided me when I walked through that front door is something I'll never forget. You were so kind and gracious. And then he got into, you know what? Thank you so much. I love my work. I get to be with people all day long and talk to them, and I get to put a smile on their face. And I love coming to work. And I was so amazed at his words, but it kind of showed me that, yeah, there's a sense of gratitude, regardless of who I am, that I am able to be in this world, interacting with people and being around people, and not out there proving himself, just being. And maybe he was proving himself. I don't know. But if I consider, yeah, how we are in North America, our way of thinking and how it's about me, and I better have my drive through, and yeah, I don't care about the climate. I'll just drive my vehicle because I want to live this life, or I control my own life. If we had more of an interconnected world, I think we'd have less devastation that we're actually creating day in and day out.
Yeah,
So,
because we're distracting ourselves from our own misery, essentially, because we're completely disconnected from each other. Technology has replaced human connection, and it can never replace human connection.
so what is it going to take?
Well, I think we're starting to see it now. Like I've noticed in the last few years. I know I follow them on LinkedIn. There's an organized nonprofit organization out there dedicated to helping people understand social connection and promoting awareness around it. Because we have we've allowed, like, technology is just one thing, but we've allowed these technologies to permeate our lives to the point where we have become very disconnected. Yes, we can connect more through these mediums like you and I are now, but nothing ever is going to replace the day to day, in real life, human interaction, right? But even banking, right? We don't even go to our banks anymore and interact with tellers. We just do everything online. So all of these opportunities for all these little micro, I like to call them micro social interactions, have gone by the wayside. We don't even need to go to the grocery store anymore. There's all these opportunities to connect socially, and we've created this, society of modern day conveniences to have everything at the click of a button, but it's come at a huge cost. And that's having all these social interactions throughout our day to day life. I think bringing awareness to that and really trying to develop social policies, public policy around creating healthier communities and really controlling, like, for example, I'll give an example of, they're looking at banning social media
Yeah.
to children under 16 now in this country, and they've already done that in other countries. Why is that? Because of the impact, not just on the individual children themselves in terms of the exposure to potential harms and whatnot online, but the mental health issues that can come with it, and also because of I think the disconnect it creates, because more and more children are spending more and more time, way more on time online than ever before, and that's why a lot of them nowadays have more social anxiety than, I mean, you and I ever did when we were growing up as children. I didn't know any child really growing up that had social anxiety or anxiety in general, right? Like
I
it
did.
was it
I don't
was
think it was never diagnosed though, but I definitely had it.
no. Well, yeah, sure, and there might have been that kid out there that did, but it was few and far between, is what I'm saying. And maybe it was due to the lack of awareness to some degree, but at the same time, I think because our societies back then, before technology, were a lot more cohesive, that we had again a more sense of belonging. I think people need that social connection to feel belonging, to feel less anxious. I think there's more anxiety nowadays because, especially younger generations, are more socially disconnected than ever before. And by socially disconnected, I don't mean that they don't know a lot of stuff that, and they don't interact online, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah,
It's completely replaced. Go outside, go to the high school, walk down the road, look at all the kids looking at their phones instead of talking to each other and laughing and smiling and playing.
I don't
It,
disagree with you. And I think I don't have the data on this, but I'm sure that in our generation, when we were growing up, there were high anxiety rates for certain families, for sure. Families that were more disconnected, maybe when both parents were working or their parents were dysfunctional or one parent was an alcoholic, and like what I went through, or I'm sure even with your parents, we're not going to get into the careers of our parents, but I'm sure that had an impact on you as well in how you grew up rather. But today, even with my son, when he was younger, my ex and I both worked full time hours. We got home and
yeah,
had to take care of him. And what do a lot of parents do now is they give their kids the iPad. Hey, watch this movie. I'm cooking dinner. Or here,
yeah.
occupy yourself. I'm doing this. So it starts with parenting at a young age. So
It
what
definitely
could
is
be
parent.
done differently at that young age where there are these demands on us to be able to live in this world that's getting more and more expensive, where food prices are crazy right now, in my opinion, in how much I'm spending on food.
Yep.
What can governments do to create families that feel, because you need enough money. Like if you don't have enough money, you're going to struggle, right? So money is part of life.
Yep.
But how do we create these communities where people have a reasonable amount of work? They can afford to pay their bills. They can now spend more time with their children.
Well, I
How do we
mean,
shift that? Like, yeah, you have this not for profit that you're talking about, but ultimately, I think it starts at a really, really young age, even before you think about having kids, because you're bringing your
yeah.
generational history into this as well. How does one do that?
Well, I mean, it comes from within ourselves too. It's not just about relying on our governments, which ultimately are ourselves, because they're just people who we elect to, create these policies and laws and whatnot to hopefully look out for our best interest, right? As best they can based on the information they have at hand. But at the end of the day, I think it comes from within ourselves. We have to be the catalyst to change. It has to come from the individuals, us as individuals ourselves, and us as a family unit, right? And maybe there's something to be said about getting back to. I'm not saying a more traditional way of raising children. I don't care if it's the man or the woman who stays home, but I think we might need to look at, well, how do we create an environment where our children do feel more supported? And maybe it is having, not that it's possible nowadays, but maybe we need to look at that and say, well, were our children better off having one parent at home predominantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they were there for the children more, and how do we create safe communities for children to go out, and parents for that matter too, because I think it's actually more the parents than the children, for them to feel safe, for their children to go out and play, right? Because I think there's been some anxiety created around that even. Because when we give them the iPad, guess what? We're controlling their environment. We're essentially saying, it's almost, you're actually doing it for yourself as a parent more than a child, because what you're doing is saying, I feel more comfortable and less anxious if you're placated. If you're sitting there on the couch where I can see you looking at your iPad, because I know no harm can come to you.
Yeah, it's a
Or,
safety thing. Yeah,
well, no physical harm
yeah,
anyways,
yeah,
but who
yeah.
knows, right? So I think we need to start educating parents to say, look, that can be okay in some instances, but it can't replace those social interactions that you can't control all the time, that you can't see, right? It's okay to let your children go out and play outside in the neighborhood, right? It's okay to allow them to interact with other kids in the neighborhood, go play street hockey, whatever it might be. We need to get back to things like that. I look around my neighborhood and I can walk around the neighborhood. I don't see children outside playing. I don't see them laughing and running in the streets and riding their bikes or playing street hockey or anything like that anymore.
Well, there's a big
They're all
fear there as
inside.
well, right? And there could be murders out there, or rapists, or people get abducted. So there's also, you're protecting your
Yeah,
kids
but
so that they're not. And I know the
sure.
chance of
But
that happening is very
look at all
slim.
the
Yeah.
Look at all the harm that's coming to them online. Look at
Oh
all the
yeah. Yeah.
online bullying and exploitation, all sexploitation, even, right? Like children are being victimized online. There's becoming more and more harm out of them being online more than them being outside, with the small, minute risk that there could be a predator lurking around our neighborhoods. I mean, that's the exception. That's not the rule. And it feels like we've taught our kids that that's the rule, but that's not the rule. That's the exception. If they're in their neighborhood, in their community, the chances of them something bad happening to them is very slim to none, right? I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of
Hmm.
course it does. We know
Yeah.
that. We know what happens, but it's a lot less likely. And yet we're more comfortable with exposing them to basically the entire world through social networking and YouTube and all of these things, right? Like, why is that? Because we can see them and we know they're physically safe. We've forgotten that there's a mental component to this, right? Completely. And not just from the fact that they can be harmed. There's actual real threats from them through the internet and being online, right? It's not just that. It's the components they're missing out on, right?
Hmm.
It's the feeling of connectedness and belonging that they're missing out on. That I have this group of friends outside that I can run around and play with and play tag and all of these things, right?
Yeah. And for the parents, I think it's for us to role model that. Like you and I have talked about this, how now at my age, my wife and I have mutual friends that we hang out with all the time. And it's a
Yeah.
safe place to go and we interact. But kids have to see that happen as well. But I think the government plays a big role in this because we can role model what we want as parents at home and not give the kid the iPad and play with them or do some drawing together or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. But then they go out in the environment and they see this individualistic society where people go through their drive through or they go to a mall and it takes away from the downtown feel of walking just downtown and experiencing things, or people on the public trails, people are driving everywhere. So the governments, they're designing infrastructure. So it is very individualistic in some cases. I think there's definitely exceptions to that rule that we see all over the place. But one thing that came up for me when you were talking about this is just even public parks and having more park space available where
Yeah.
not just the kids are playing, but adults are out there playing with kids where both are having fun. Like an example I heard recently was my stepson's sister and her parents. What they're doing now is they have a co-op soccer league where kids are involved as well. So everybody's playing soccer together once a week and anybody's welcome to go. But that's
That's
such a
awesome.
good example of having a community oriented event where people learn to be together, they learn to be safe together. And what you're also creating there is this sense of camaraderie and people looking out for each other. But how do we get people out of their houses to do these kind of things? Our protected homes,
Well,
how do we get them out? Like, think about your neighborhood, Jeff. How do you get people out to do that kind of stuff?
yeah. Well, I think like you said, government can do more to create those experiences and instances. Putting more funding maybe into local community, grassroots type of events that would get people outside interacting with each other could be helpful for sure. Supporting more of those casual, informal type of situations.
Hmm.
And what I don't know what that looks like. I mean, it'd be something that I think people need to talk through and discuss, right? I mean, I don't have all the solutions or answers because it's a very complex problem. It's not just one thing we can do to mitigate, like to eliminate it, right? There's many prongs to this. So it's not a simple solution. It's a multifaceted solution that requires, I think, a lot of thinking and a lot of forethought and planning and thinking and conscious intention, if you will, because again, it's also multi-level. So it's not just something the government can fix. It's something we as individuals can fix. It's something we as families can fix, and that comes to do with creating that intention of building a community and connecting with others and making it a safe place for whatever children to grow up and play, for adults to go outside and play too. Even adults don't even interact anymore. You don't see the adults out talking and hanging out and having a beer or whatever on their front step or a coffee or whatever it might be. Even adults are just sitting inside looking at their phones,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
So we're also modeling that behavior to children. And so what are children going to grow up and do? They're going to do the same thing. And it's just going to get worse with every generation. And so because that's what they're going to think is normal, because they're going to grow up with that, right? And it's not normal. It's abnormal. And that's why we're creating all this dysfunction. That's why there are all these mental illnesses on the rise, like, anxiety and depression and things like that, because we've created these dysfunctional patterns and habits because of modern day technology, right?
And also, I would argue because of the two people that are sitting in chairs looking at each other right now, you and I.
Yeah,
we've also role modeled that.
Yeah.
So my question is, what is it that you do or do not do?
Well, first,
okay, yeah,
the
ahead.
First thing to change in any behavior, like, so in change theory, the first thing you have to recognize, you have to be aware there's an issue in order to resolve it, right? In order to change it. Like that comes in individual change behavior and on a societal level, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to acknowledge that there's a problem to begin with. So that's the first step in making that change, right? It's just becoming aware of the fact that it's a problem, right? And then the next step is preparing to do something about it. Well, what does that look like, right? So think about this. So let's say the problem is let's say I'm, even though I'm not, but let's say I am, I'm out of shape cardiovascular, right? I know it. I'm too sedentary. I don't get enough cardiovascular activity, whatever it is. Well, if I'm just continuing on my day-to-day life and I don't even think it's a problem, I won't do anything about it. So there's nothing, it doesn't matter what the government tries to do. If the person isn't aware it's a problem, they won't do anything about it, right? When they discover that, and when it becomes a problem, maybe they have a health issue that comes up or whatever it might be, right? Maybe they have trouble walking down the street and realize, wow, I'm really out of shape. I don't know. Something triggers them inside themselves to become aware that this is a problem, that they're not feeling conditioned enough. They don't feel whatever it might be. So then they actually decide, okay, well, you know what? I should probably do something about this. I don't know what it is yet. They have no idea what it is they might need to do. But you know what? I'm aware it's a problem. I might need to do something about this. So the best thing you can do with people in that state of change is educate them, right? And so, that's where the government can come in, right? Is public policy. So educate them. Why having a healthy cardiovascular system is important to your overall well-being. So start educating them. And then at some point, that individual is going to prepare to do something about it. So maybe they go out and buy a pair of running shoes because they decide, well, you know what? If I'm going to get into shape again, I'm going to go out and maybe I'll do some running, or I'll go to the gym and run on the treadmill, whatever it might be. Or maybe I'll start playing, pickleball or something like that, right? So then they finally go out and buy a pair of shoes. They might not use the pair of shoes for a couple of months, but they've got the pair of shoes now. Mm-hmm. So now they're aware there's a problem. They have what they need to help solve the problem, but they haven't taken action on it yet, right? And eventually at some point, they will hopefully take action on it. They have the pair of shoes now. So there's not that issue, because before it wasn't a problem. Before they didn't even know it was a problem. Then they became aware of the fact that it was a problem, but hadn't done anything about it yet. And then something shifted, and that was they went out and got a pair of shoes. So they got a tool or something to support them in solving the problem. And now they actually have the capacity to solve the problem, which is taking action and doing something about it. So now you start going to the gym, running on the trail, whatever it might be. So that's a very simple example of the theories of change, right? And then it's about maintaining that, because you can do that for a few months and go, oh, hey, I feel great. But then you can fall back, as you know, into old habits or patterns. And pretty soon, guess what? You're out of shape again. You've allowed yourself to revert back to, a stage where you're at before. So it's all about maintenance and integration into your life at that point, right? So how do I continue to maintain that good cardiovascular conditioning? Well, I can, get up from my desk more and walk around. I can, walk down to the grocery store to get milk. You can incorporate it into your, day-to-day life. It doesn't always have to be, running on a treadmill at the gym to help maintain your cardiovascular conditioning. So I guess that's where I'm going to here is like, you have to be aware that there's a problem. And I think that's what's happening now in our society not just on the individual level, I think our governments and our institutions are starting to recognize that we do have a problem in our society, and it is one of those things is that social disconnection, right? That we, I think, had at one point that a lot of people are feeling nowadays, and because people are feeling it more and more nowadays, and I think the pandemic definitely magnified that. I think people are craving it more now. So I think people and governments in general are recognizing, because they're people too, that we need to do something about it. We're aware that it's a problem now, because in all of modern history, we never had all of these advanced tools, right? We didn't have all this technology before. We are the most advanced civilization in the history of humankind on this planet that we know of, right? So how do you fix something that where it's never been a problem before in the entire history of human beings, right? You have to come up with new ways of doing things to solve those problems.
Yeah, but I would argue that means you have to get out of ordinary and be extraordinary. Like this person that might be overweight and it's impacting their health. That's their ordinary life. But what you're saying there, Jeff, and I hope you don't mind that I'm challenging you, is that you're saying that they have to think differently and they have to change, which is what our society is about as well. And what helps us become healthier individuals is we notice what's working and what's not working, and then shifting towards something that's working, which means we have to be willing to step out of our ordinary lives and into what I'm going to call extraordinary, by being able to do all these different things that we can do. But sorry, there's a couple of points that I wrote down.
But here,
can I just
here's
something?
The thing is, those things aren't extraordinary, Glenn. Being healthy isn't extraordinary. It's actually just being ordinary. It's our natural state of being. It's our environment and our society and the conditioning that has created unhealthy, dysfunctional patterns. So really, that just those healthy, those are our norms, really. It's just that we've created dysfunction in our society. So don't misinterpret me. Even being healthy is ordinary. Right?
Okay, but
it is ordinary.
So I just want to step back on that, because I think it's important to do some root cause analysis. So why is that person not focusing in on their cardiovascular activity? Why might that be?
Well, because everything's become easy and convenient.
No, but why?
We've conditioned ourselves. We've conditioned ourselves over many decades now to continually improve our technology and our modern day conveniences, but we haven't really given it much forethought into how it's going to impact human behavior. And so now what's happening is, and this is happening in the younger generations. Like, I'll give you another example. I've never ordered Uber Eats. Don't even have a desire to. Why would I? To me, that's a useless thing. I'd rather make my own dinner. My 26-year-old son, however, he's ordered Uber Eats tons.
Yeah.
So why? Because it's less effort and obviously ultimately less fulfilling, in my opinion, to do that, because it's easier. It takes less effort. Why put in the effort to make my own meal, to enjoy it, when I can just order it online and it can be at my doorstep in 20 minutes time, and then I don't have to put any effort into it. I don't even have to walk out and get it, right? So again, we're conditioning we've created all this technology and these modern day conveniences to essentially create more dysfunction in our society. And I'm not saying there hasn't been some good that have come out of it. I'm sure there has, but ultimately we haven't really given it much thought of how it's going to impact human behavior, and therefore how it's going to impact the health and well-being of individuals. So
yeah, well, and a lot of what you're saying, I think, starts at that young age as well, because that person that's probably overweight and knows that they need to lose weight is probably so used to trying to please others, and they don't have enough time to do everything else, or they need to order Uber Eats or just go to fast food because they have to go back to work. I think our priorities need to shift. It's not about always trying to please others. I think it's about pleasing our others in a healthy way without sacrificing your own needs. And I think there's another piece there, is we've made working out, even in the word working out, we're working versus like, and it's sad that I see this now at my age, but what I really get fulfillment out of on the pickleball courts, and I know a lot of people think pickleball is like loud and obnoxious, but oh my gosh, it's fun. You get to be with people. you are you get to improve at things, you get to make mistakes and see the impact of your mistakes, but at the same time, not that it's a huge cardio workout, but you're moving your body. And it's
Yeah.
amazing the number of people that are over 60, 70, or even 80 who are super fit doing this. But to have that kind of activity where it's not working out, you're playing you're
It's
playing pickleball,
recreation.
you're playing tennis, you're playing
Yeah.
soccer, where no, you need to go for a hike and go and work out. Well,
Go work out. I
go
know
work out.
exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, and gyms have been one of the most disabling things for a lot of people because exactly that. You have to go to the gym to work out. It's become more disabling to people. The best, if you want people to, become deconditioned, tell them to go buy a gym membership because probably they'll never use it. And the gyms count on that. The gyms count on most people. They'll go to the gym for the month of January and then they'll never see them again, hardly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We have to get back to the idea of physical activity being something that's joyful. So that's why I like to use the word recreation, right?
Yeah.
Recreational activity. Because why do you think we call it recreation? We're recreating the joy of play. We're recreating
Yeah.
those memories that when we were out running around as children, when we used to go, play with the sticks or kick the soccer ball around the field, or I don't know if you ever do this as a kid, but like you get inside a tire, roll the tire, like all these stupid things, stupid but fun, silly
Yeah. Yeah.
things we
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
as a kid. We're trying to recreate that joy of play. That's why it's called recreation. We're recreating the joy of play. And so I think we have to, be really mindful of our language around physical activity, especially with the younger generations. You have to disguise it. If you
Mm-hmm.
tell them to go work out, that's going to be a lot harder for them to do because it's become our society in some ways has made it so easy to put little effort into getting what we need, our needs met, right?
Yeah.
Uber is a perfect example of that. Like, think about it. We used to have, like, we came from an agrarian society. So we knew how much work, look how much work and effort it used to take to grow our own food and then preserve it and everything else that went into it and then cook it. So now, and then we got to the place where, okay, we're no longer agrarian, we're in an industrial society where, okay, well, we don't need to grow it anymore. We have mass production on food and that whatnot. And so we have some farmers, we still need, some farmers, but we don't need as many because now we have fewer farmers with massive farms, right? Where, technology runs pretty much their entire farm, right? So now we just go to the grocery store to get our food. So that's even less effort than having to grow our own food, right? And make
Yeah.
it and all of that and preserve it. We just have to go to the grocery store now. So that requires effort though. And that's our generation, right? Where we kind of, yeah, we don't really grow our own food as much. We might, some of us might, I mean, I have my own little community garden out back and whatnot. And it's great. And I grow a little bit of food, but most of the time we just go to the grocery store and get what you want. So there's effort involved, but we don't have to prepare it. In terms of, like, we could get highly processed foods in a box and we don't have to make it, or we could still, get all the ingredients and make our own food and all that. So now we've gotten even further removed. We don't even have to go to the grocery store. We can just have the food delivered to us, right?
Yeah.
And so now the grocery stores are offering the delivery, and people can just get their food delivered to us. So we don't even have to go have the effort to go to the grocery store. So it's making us even. I hate using this word, but let's call it lazier, because we don't have to put the effort into even going to the grocery store. So now we have the generation that's growing up of, well, I can just order my groceries, right? I can still make my food. That's fine. But now we've even gone further to say, well, you don't have to make your food anymore. We'll just deliver it to you. So just call us and we'll make sure that we deliver your food and it's prepared and you can order whatever you want in an instant. You don't even have to make it.
Mm-hmm.
We're so far away from our food source nowadays. How can anyone appreciate food anymore because they don't understand the effort it takes into growing a carrot, right? So I think in some ways it's taken away our pleasure from eating food because we haven't been involved in the growing and the effort that it requires to actually grow the food, prepare it, and all of that stuff that goes with it, right? Because I don't know about you, but when I create my own, like last night I made pizzas. I love making my own pizza. Why? because I know the effort and time it took into making it. It makes it more fulfilling when I eat it, as opposed to just order it from the pizzeria down the street, right? I don't even like the pizza down the street because it's all prepared and manufactured and all that. It doesn't even feel real anymore. I'd rather make my own pizza. So I guess what I'm saying is we've created a society where it requires so little effort nowadays that we continue to condition our children to and younger generations in general to put less effort into things, right?
Well, yeah,
because they
yeah,
can get their basic needs met with a click of a button.
and this goes back to that ordinary life is. If I think about my content life, I love the points you just made. Is if families could do more together, such as create the pizza together or go out and garden together. For me, I'm blessed to have a half-acre lot, and I'm out there gardening, and that's where I meet a lot of my people in the community, because they walk by and we start chatting. How are things going? Versus this staying inside your house. Even community gardens that are being built in certain neighborhoods, I think is such a great thing, because then you get the community out to work on a garden. They see their own vegetables grow. They get to interact. And I think those are steps forward that the government's making, which I think is great. But yeah, I think that's such a good point. If we can stop relying on the self-service, immediate gratification thing, and actually in our families role model what it makes to make dinner together, to do the dishes together. We are then occupying our time, which means that I'm not sitting in front of the TV, watching the TV occupying my time. I'm actually having family members part of my experience. Like this morning when Fran and I made the Vietnamese coffee, the egg coffee, it was a joint activity we had to do. It was a lot of work. Right. There was a lot of cleanup, and it only took us maybe a minute to drink the coffee, which was it took about 30 minutes to make it. But it's the journey, I think, that
it's for me, the journey,
the journey with others, others, I think for me, Jeff, is what a fulfilling, content life is like even you and me doing this podcast right now, that's fulfilling for me because I'm not doing it alone. And if we can have families do that, that would be an extraordinary life versus what we're falling into. Ordinary needs to be redefined, I think.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And in fact, the ordinary life is actually extraordinary.
Yeah.
Right? But because of all these, modern day conveniences and instant gratification, all these things that have been given to us now that we take for granted, it's taken away the ability in a way to have an ordinary life. Mm-hmm. Right. So we can't have those. We don't have as many of those micro social interactions anymore. So we're even more socially disconnected than ever before. And so we don't get those experiences reinforced in our day-to-day habits or patterns to create that joy, right? So we just placate ourselves watching Netflix all the time or whatever it might be. We order, our food from Uber Eats and all these things that have no ultimate fulfillment because we're not enjoying it with we're not interacting with other people. We're looking at a screen. And so all of these things are a distraction from each other and ourselves and from that connection with each other and feeling supported. And what I like to believe, living an actual ordinary life, because in the ordinary is the extraordinary. Yeah. And that's what we're missing out on. We've been so focused on having these extraordinary lives, but ultimately it's created these extraordinary things like all this modern day technology and everything. But we've left, do you know what I mean? But we've left that ordinariness behind, like all of a sudden, why isn't it good enough just to exactly do what you and your wife did this morning? Enjoy making a cup of coffee together that took you 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Instead of, I ask you a question, would it have been as fulfilling if you just clicked the button and had Uber Eats deliver your...
Oh, not at all. No, because I'm not learning anything either, right? But
and you're not interacting with your wife at the same time. So it's like, so that's what I'm saying is it's actually the ordinary lives that are more fulfilling than all of these things that we strive for. It's those day-to-day moments that we share with other people that create the extraordinary moments in our life. It's not all of these things that we're conditioned to believe we need to be happy.
No, I 100% agree with you. I was thinking of Father's Day last weekend where that morning Fran went mountain biking with some friends. I decided to go on my own and just do my own little mountain bike ride there because there's no guys that were joining. But I could have called somebody and said, "Hey, do you want to go mountain biking?" But I didn't. And because Father's Day is a bit of a challenge for me sometimes. And then after that, we went paddle boarding with some friends. And then one of our neighbors came down. She wanted to try out the paddleboard, and we showed her how to paddleboard, and we watched her fall off the paddleboard and stuff. And it was a lot of fun. But it was such a great day because it wasn't done alone. It was done with others and was also helping others and being with others. And that takes you and I to create that within our own
Yeah.
lives to role model that, and hopefully more and more people. Like one thing I love about the community that I'm in, sure, I have to drive everywhere in most cases, but I don't also because I have walking trails and have the ocean right by at my doorstep. However, we fortunately have the kind of community that somebody will call up me and say, "Hey, Glenn, do you want to go for a walk?" Okay, let's go for a walk. And then we're chit chatting the entire time. Or, hey, let's go for a paddle. And then we go for a paddle. Or this afternoon, I'm going to a friend's house and there's a bunch of us going there to watch the soccer game, Canada versus South Africa. Like these things, it takes effort. So I guess my question is, what are some things that you could do differently, Jeff? And then I'll share what I could do differently to create that ordinary, to move from the life that we
To
in.
be ordinary, to be
Yeah.
ordinary.
Yeah. What can you do to be ordinary with your family? Because you mentioned the
Yeah.
importance of family. How can you role model that?
Yeah, I mean, creating more connection, playing a game, finding the joy in just playing a board game, instead of these online games. That's a simple one right
Mm-hmm.
there, right? It creates the interaction with your family, and it creates experience situations that are unexpected that you can all laugh about. And it's not even just about that experience. It could be about, well, why don't we make popcorn too? and,
Yeah.
and and play board games. So it's about making popcorn together. Oh, well, maybe we'll make caramel popcorn. Oh, let's look at that. How we do that, right? So use the problem is I think people have used it's where the technology and everything are meant as tools. They're
Mm-hmm.
not meant to distract us from our lives all the time. They're tools to make our lives easier, to provide information quicker and hopefully more accurate information. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there online for sure, but it's like, so use those tools. Yeah. So, if you want to create caramel popcorn together, find a recipe online that you can do together, but do it together.
Yeah.
Right. And then sit down and play a board game. So little simple things like that. Right. Invite your neighbors over, one night or one morning for a coffee, or, I mean, it's interesting how our world has expanded so much in so many ways through social media, and yet a lot of us don't even know our neighbors that well or don't interact with them that much.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we create more social interaction and connection with our neighbors? Offer to help them out, offer to carry the groceries in, offer to put their garbage out for them, have them over for a coffee, tell them if they need a hand, mowing their lawn or whatever it might be, right? Like, we used to do that all the time with each other, right? And we looked out for each other. We were part, and that comes from our agrarian roots, right?
Yeah.
That's what we did as farmers. We helped each other in the fields because we knew if our crop or our fields were suffering, our neighbors would be there for us, and we want that help and support. And so, because we could empathize with each other, that also compelled us to help others because, that's just what would happen because you never knew if your crop was going to fail, right? There's always that potential. So the help and support you got from your neighbors was always appreciated, which was why you reciprocated because you know what it feels like to be in trouble. And so it's better to help each other out because that way we're all supported and we have each other's back. And so that, our crops were less likely to fail if we got that additional support or help that we needed, right? Whatever it might be. So I think that's what I'm saying is create those moments of ordinariness because there's a lot of special in those ordinary moments.
Okay.
And
So
and I
yeah.
think we become very disconnected from that.
Yeah. There's one neighbor that he walks by sometimes and he talks a lot. So what I do is when I see him, I kind of hide. and, but so to end today's episode, I want to create a stretch goal, and then I'll see if you have a stretch goal. There's a neighbor who lives right across the street from me. He bought his house 8 years ago, and I've been here for 9 years. I don't know the guy's name.
Hmm.
He goes to work. He has 2 dogs. We invited him to a party ages ago, put a note there. He's didn't respond or anything. And again, he's directly across from my place. I am
Yeah.
going to go and introduce myself to him because
Cool.
and it's going to feel really awkward because we spent the last 8 years
8 years.
not acknowledging each other or anything. And I'm only making assumptions that he's an introvert, doesn't want to interact with other people because but there's a few neighbors that know him. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put myself out there. What are you going to do? If you want to create a stretch goal, and we'll check in on each other on this as well.
Yeah.
How
What
can
can
you
I
create more
create?
community within your family or without?
Well, what I can do is I can, like, it's funny. I actually have a really good relationship with my next door neighbors to the right of us, and we live in a townhouse complex. So, I often put out their garbage and recycling when I put out my garbage and recycling. I often shovel their sidewalk even though we have people that are supposed to, shovel our walkways and stuff in the wintertime, I'll often go out and shovel it before it gets too bad and end up shoveling theirs too. So, but something I've always said to do with them is like, hey, we should have you over for, a drink or something, or a coffee or whatever, something like that. Actually invite them into our,
Mm-hmm.
our unit, right? We've never done that. So that would be a stretch for me, is actually inviting them into a place to sit down and talk and drink and connect. Because again, it's like I've created a relationship with them, but I've never put myself out there further to say, hey, welcome in, come into our home, welcome, and let's get to know you more. Because at the end of the day, I know them, but I don't know them well, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's one thing I could do to create more connection and belonging in my neighborhood, is to do that more with my neighbors.
Yeah. And as we're both sharing this, I guess for me, what's coming loud and clear is an ordinary life with others is what's so important.
That's right.
Right.
We don't have to be millionaires. We
Yeah.
don't have to
Yeah.
have rock hard bodies. We don't have it. All that doesn't matter. What matters is, do we have that connection in our life with other humans?
Yeah. And I think it's also really important to pump up once in a while and have that rock hard body and those strong abs as well. No?
Sure, but we look, like you said, we become such an individualistic society that the
Yeah.
focus is all on me. We have to change that
Mm-hmm.
again and balance it out with focusing on we,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. On that note, thanks, Jeff. This has been awesome. So we're going to create a we oriented society. And it takes a couple of guys like us to start getting the ball rolling, but we have to take some actions.
Well, because I'm extraordinary.
You are extraordinary. Thanks for listening.